Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, and welcome to the Senior Resources Show. My name is Cary, and I'm the Director of the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department. Thank you for joining me today. Today, my guest is Tianna Pettinger, social worker with Senior Services of Albany, and Tianna is on today to talk about the telephone support group for caregivers. Tianna, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm really excited about this telephone support group that you provide through Senior Services of Albany because I think it's meeting such an unmet need in our community. Can you talk to me a little bit about what the group is?
Sure. The group is basically a support group, which a lot of people are familiar with the concept that folks meet together that all maybe have a similar interest or similar struggle to share information and to feel like they're not alone. The difference with this support group is that it's for family caregivers, so folks that have an elder loved one that they help to take care of. But our group meets over the telephone, and so what that means for folks is that they're able to stay at home, and that by being on the phone, they can be part of a meeting with other caregivers where you can hear the other caregivers, and when you talk, they can all hear you, just like you're in a room with your eyes closed, basically, and you can just simply be at home and participate that way.
Well, it certainly provides a lot of flexibility for folks who need the support but find the traditional way of obtaining caregiver support through the traditional in-person groups. It just doesn't really work anymore for a lot of folks given the demands on their schedule. So I think it's a terrific idea. Now, who leads the group?
I'm the group leader, and I'm a social worker, so I bring training in, how to help groups work together well, how to help people with things like coping with stress, and some content specific to the field of aging, and then all the other group members really bring to the group kind of how to creatively solve problems, what they've done in the past, the support for each other. So it's really, I'm the group leader, but it's really the other caregivers as participants that bring the best things to the group.
Really keep the facilitation happening. Can you tell me a little bit how the group works? I mean, the technology piece is so interesting to me.
Sure. Some people have been on conference calls, maybe as part of a job that they have, but others really haven't ever been on a conference call before. And the way we do the conference calls is kind of the easiest way possible for folks. So simply, they get all registered with us, and they get a list of the dates and the times when we'll be meeting. I'll remind them day before and say, remember, tomorrow night we have a meeting, and then I'll call them. And their phone will ring just like any other incoming call that they get. They'll answer, and I'll say, this is Tianna, I'm calling to connect you to our meeting. And then I'll connect them in with all the other caregivers, and we all can hear each other and talk with each other. So really, as far as the participant goes, it's almost like getting any other phone call, except they get to talk with a group of people as opposed to just one person.
And I was curious about the confidentiality. Is that an issue that you, how do you handle that basically is what I'd like to know.
We have people use their first names when they're on the call, and then any information beyond that, they share what they want to share with the group and with the other members. So about their caregiving situation, about, what area of the county they live in, or anything else about themselves. They share as much as they're comfortable, and usually over time people get more comfortable with the other group members and feel like sharing more about themselves, maybe exchanging phone numbers, that sort of thing. But initially it's just first name and then whatever you'd like to share about the caregiving that you do.
That's great. And who are the folks that participate in this group? What is the demographic that typically, calls you to obtain some information and start the process of becoming involved?
Well, as far as our eligibility kind of requirements for our grant, that would mean that the person who is giving care is not being paid in any way, and they're caring for someone who's a relative, a friend, a neighbor, and that the person who needs care is 60 or older, so senior citizen by that definition, and that the person needing care really needs help in order to get through the routines of daily life. So, help with mobility, eating, dressing, bathing, that they can't just be totally on their own and be self-sufficient, so that caregivers involved in arranging for others to provide that assistance or providing that assistance themselves. But in terms of the typical folks that we have on the group, oftentimes we have women who are caring for their mothers. And sometimes they live under the same roof, but actually more often the mother lives in her own home or apartment, and the daughter is doing her best just to keep her in the community and safe and happy. But we also have spouses who have a spouse that is, having more chronic illness troubles than they are, and so they're in the role of helping their spouse more than they used to. So really we have a variety of folks on the calls.
And they're folks that need support with not only the emotional support to get through another day of caring for someone, but also the physical support. If an individual needs some assistance with their activities of daily living, whether it be getting home care services or home delivered meals, it's a terrific way for folks to obtain not only the emotional support they need, but how they get those tangible services for their loved ones.
Sure, yes, and that is one of the roles of the support group, is that I can kind of provide information to the group, but also other group members, encouraging or sharing ideas, things that they've done themselves and services they've been happy with.
Well, I know in the town of Colonie we're fortunate to work so closely with your agency and to be able to forward seniors and caregivers onto this program who may be in need of the support, since we don't have a telephone support group in Colonie. Tell me, what is the criteria for residency or to be able to join the club or to join the group?
The residency would be that either the caregiver, the family member who wants to be in the group, or the elder that they're caring for lives in Albany County. One might live here and one might live in another state even, but as long as one or the other of them lives in Albany County, so the town of Colonie, definitely everybody would fall into that. And then, like I said earlier, that the elder is over 60 and needs help with daily life. But they're pretty simple requirements in order to be eligible for the group, and there's no cost that folks have to incur in order to participate.
Well, that's great. Before I came for this taping today, I was on the phone with an adult daughter who's 58, living in Florida, and trying to keep her 80-some-odd-year-old parents going in Colonie. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, boy, for a long-distance caregiver to be able, who misses not being in the area and is connected to this area, to be able to get that support from peers that know about the community services. I mean, she's living in Florida, so sometimes the information you get from your peers who are walking in your shoes is more valuable than possibly what we could give as professionals. So for long-distance caregivers, it certainly is a terrific option because there's no additional cost to them to make that linkage, and like you said, they can do it in their, in their homes, or if they're out recreationally, they can. They could call in from a park bench in the park in the evening if they wanted to.
Right.
Well, that's terrific, and I think that's really the value of this program as we try to reach out to folks who are no longer in the area and want to be involved in their loved one's care, but can't.
Right. We're just trying to make those traditional support groups even more easy on the participant. Just they get to stay home, or even, like you said, be on vacation, or be at their winter home, or their camp, their summer camp. Folks even can be on from the lake if they're so fortunate. But they don't have to worry about the weather. They don't have to worry about, do they have a cold and don't want to spread it, or is it flu season? They don't want to, catch anything. They don't have to worry about, getting a ride if they don't drive themselves. And they don't have to worry about their loved one, and if it's okay to leave their loved one home, or if they have young children, don't have to worry about who's going to watch the children. They can put their children to bed and then be on the phone with us.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I know I hear oftentimes when I did do a traditional support group, when I would ask someone, "Oh, we missed you last month." Well, I didn't have anybody to watch Mom, or it was just too cold to go out.
Right.
And these winter nights, it's hard to get out sometimes.
Right.
Motivate yourself to get out, I should say. So it does provide that flexibility, which I think is so critical to supporting folks as they care for their loved ones.
Right.
Now, when seniors look into this program, or caregivers, whoever is going to be accessing this program, is there any special paperwork that they have to do in the beginning, or how do they go about accessing or even getting general information on the program?
Sure. They'd have some choices as to how to do that. If they were familiar with your agency, of course, they could, discuss it with someone at your agency who could help them get in touch with us. But also they could directly contact our Caregiver Connection program. The number for that is 465-1398. And we would just basically have a single page form that we would be filling out with them over the phone. We'd just ask them some questions about the caregiving that they're doing, who they're caring for. We would ask about residency, because it is required that either the caregiver or the older adult they're caring for lives in Albany County. And of course, if you live in the town of Colonie, you've met that requirement. We'll ask about ages, because the person being cared for does have to be 60 or older. And we'll ask about the kinds of things that that person needs help with. The group is designed for the caregivers of people that do need assistance with activities of daily life, that they're not fully independent and they need help, and that's why the family member is involved and helping
Some of
them
those
out.
activities of daily life could be like meal preparation or bathing or transferring, those types of simple...
trouble getting around and taking care of the daily routines. Yeah.
Well, it certainly does, as we see people trying to stay in their homes in the community, all these different types of support services help to promote that independence that seniors so much, want to continue.
Right. And, I think our family caregivers really do wonderful work and are the reason why so many older adults are able to stay at home and be safe and have their needs taken care of. And this is just one of the programs out there that just tries to help hold up family caregivers in that position that they have and in their role with their responsibilities, and just kind of give them a place to feel supported and not alone, so that they can continue doing that great work.
And and the groups meet on a monthly basis, is that correct?
Yep. The meetings are once a month, and there's 2 different groups, so folks would have a choice of participating on Tuesday evenings or on Wednesday evenings once a month. And the Tuesday evening group has a bit of a special focus on those caring for people that have difficulties with memory, a diagnosis of some form of dementia or Alzheimer's, so they can kind of compare notes on that specific aspect of what they're doing with their loved ones as well.
Do you find with your caregivers, once they start participating in a group, that it gives them the strength and the support that they can reach out for maybe opportunities to socialize, or maybe look at some of the other options for their loved ones? I know besides the support, there's an educational component.
Right.
So even though the caregiver, the loving family member is participating in this to get that emotional support themselves, it does open up their eyes to many other services and benefits that are out there.
Exactly. And just the last meeting I had, a woman was talking about, the challenges that she has, and other group members, were jumping in and saying, well, why don't you, try to get someone to come into the home and aid or something to relieve you so you can get out, and how about, one of those emergency response systems with a button. And they kind of really advocate to each other the importance of some of those other supports in the community, because it's a combination for folks of both knowing about the services but also feeling like they want to take that step and feeling kind of comfortable with taking that step of seeking that additional program or service. And so sometimes people need a little encouragement from others and that have used it maybe themselves and say, oh, this is really helpful, you should really try this. And they can listen to, that person's in their shoes, they can listen to their advice.
Certainly identify with it. That peer support is many times, I think, so much more beneficial than the information that I give out as I'm doing social work practice, because their peers have walked in their shoes and are facing the same challenges of trying to get mother to the doctors, or prevent falls, or whatever the issue may be. So it's very very, very important. Now, you did mention that the groups meet monthly from 7 to 8 p.m. at night. And what benefits could a caregiver expect to gain? I mean, we've touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the important benefits would be a reduction in stress for them. So we spend time specifically talking about kind of ways to cope with stress and relaxation techniques, but also just the entirety of the group experience helps to reduce stress. Also, we do give a lot of attention to how to go about solving problems that come up, and we learn about steps to kind of make that easier to manage and less intimidating. And so they'll feel more confident in being able to solve problems that come up for themselves, and then just that feeling of support and that feeling of connection to others. And as well, like you said, of this being a jumping off point for them to be connecting with other services and other individuals.
Is there a period of time that an individual can belong to the group? Is it open-ended, or is it a one-year period? Or?
It's really up to that person and their needs and what they're getting out of the group and their situation. So long as they remain being an active caregiver for their loved one, they're welcome to continue as long as they're getting benefit from the group. So I do have folks that have been in the group for multiple years, and there's really no commitment per se. So if someone was just in a meeting or two and decided it wasn't for them, that's okay as well. So it really runs the range.
Flexible.
We welcome new faces, although we don't see their faces over the phone. New voices, right? All the time, and then people do what's right for them from there.
And the average size of a group, I'm sure you try to keep them quite small and personal.
They are small. Yep. Right now, maybe we have about 5 people on a call at a time. I hope to actually get that closer to 8 people on the phone at a time. So if people hear about the program from watching this and, they want to join, there's room, and we'd love for new folks to join us.
Yeah, it's just such a flexible, easy way for caregivers to get the support they need, especially with the trend that we're seeing with caregivers today. They are much more computer savvy, and they get a lot of their information through the technology that's available today. So that need to go out to a group, a physical group, isn't as important as maybe it was for some of the older caregivers.
Right, and folks are on the go and they're mobile, and so people they don't actually have to be in their home when they participate in the group if they're on the go. And I have folks that spend winters down in Florida and are able to continue in the same meetings by phone. So really, wherever someone is, they can still participate.
Well, that's a very good benefit. That's a great benefit of the group. Tell me a little bit about the cost. Is there a cost for folks to participate in the group?
Nope, there is not a cost. There's nothing on people's phone bills in any way. As a program funded by the Albany County Department for Aging, people are informed that they have the ability to contribute towards the expense of the program, so that we can keep the program going, expand it. But beyond that, voluntary contribution they might decide to make, there is no cost that they would be incurring.
Oh, that's great. That's where the funding is so critical, that the
Right.
funding level remain for important programs like caregiver support and all the services that help to keep seniors in the community, in their home,
Right.
because they do want to age in place. Nobody wants to be forced into a costly nursing home.
Right.
And so it's really easy to provide community-based services at such a cost-effective level
Right.
that why not use what's out there, find out what's out there, access it, and providing loved ones with the support. I know many times I'll counsel someone over the phone and they'll say, gee, I feel so much better. It just felt good to know that I wasn't alone in this, or that there was an option to the issue that I was dealing with.
Right.
So now, if an individual was interested in enrolling in the program, I know you mentioned the phone number earlier, but and if you could mention it again at
Sure.
the end of the show, we'll do it again at the end of the show, then we can put that information out there. But I did want to touch, actually, kind of a little bit self-serving, but when an individual, I wanted to make people aware of when an individual is not caregiving any longer, and they've whether their loved one has passed away or their caregiving function has changed. I found when we were doing a support group for the town and at the senior center, many folks still needed support, and they didn't really feel that they belonged in the caregiver support group after their loved one died, or for whatever reason it stopped. So to meet that need, the town started a transition support group, and it's actually held here at the town library once a month, and it's for folks transitioning from the role of caregiving, whether it's their loved one's going into a nursing home, even though you're still a caregiver, but your needs are a little different, or their loved one has passed away. I found oftentimes that people they weren't ready to end the relationship in a group, but didn't feel that the caregiver support group was meeting their needs at that point. So that's available on the fourth Wednesday of every month here at the library from 1:30 to 3. So I just use this opportunity so that people know that there is more support out there.
And I'm happy to know about that too, because I have caregivers facing that very same thing, that they know their role is going to be changing, but they know that change in and of itself is going to be a challenge to them, and they'll need support around that.
Absolutely. When a person changes from the throes of being an everyday caregiver to no longer either, at any level providing caregiver support, there is a big void in someone's days and in their existence. So it is important to continue to provide that support. I know that in addition to the telephone support groups, you're doing some educational programs as well. And I know that you have one scheduled coming up soon on understanding depression. Do you want to talk a little bit about that program?
Sure. In addition to the ongoing monthly support meetings, we're going to have 4 seminars this year over the telephone. So the same thing, you're at home, I call you, I connect you to the call, you sit for an hour on the phone with us. And these are going to be much more structured and specific in the educational topic. So the first one is going to be in February, on Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. And the topic, like you said, is understanding depression, and it's being able to both identify depression in older adults and to know an appropriate way to respond if you see that in your loved one. And this is actually something that comes up a lot in the support group meetings. So I thought it would be helpful to folks to kind of, focus on that for a whole hour and really help people to understand that depression can look different in older adults than it does in middle-aged and younger folks, and that when your loved one is depressed, it really does sometimes affect you also, and to give people some tools so that they feel like there's something they can do in those situations. So if folks again are interested in that particular seminar, that would just be one night. They'd get handouts in the mail, and they would call that same number, the 465-1398 number, and let us know they're interested.
Okay. Now, I imagine it's not as interactive as the support group would be, but will there be time in that hour for people to ask questions about their personal situation?
There will be time for questions. It won't be as interactive because there'll be, material to kind of get through as a group. And if people aren't able to fully address the particulars of their situation in that 1 hour, there'd be opportunities for them to talk outside of that meeting as well to address, their particular concerns that they have.
And you don't have to be a member of the support group, the telephone support group, to participate in this. So
That's
it could
correct.
be a good entry into possibly joining the support group if you find this beneficial.
Yep, a way to give it a try just for one time and see what you think about it.
Absolutely. Now, I know Senior Service Centers of Albany provides a host of services ranging from congregate programs to transportation to health and wellness classes. But today I wanted to focus a little bit more on what services your agency provides that support caregivers.
Well, we have the Caregiver Connection program. So in addition to the telephone support group, which is part of that program, we're able to also just simply talk to the family caregivers about their concerns, the needs their loved one has, and help them to identify different sources of support, different resources and services in the community, help them make those connections. And there's also limited ability that we have to help them connect with some of those services without it being a cost to them, so they can give it a try. So with an adult day program or Meals on Wheels or the emergency response systems, that sometimes we can help them start one of those services without incurring costs at first, so they can see how it works for them and their loved one and decide if they want to make a commitment to pursue that service further. We also do seminars. In addition to the telephone seminars, we do in-person seminars in the community for caregivers at workplaces or at churches and other community forums where we get invited in to do a presentation.
I think the more information that we can infiltrate out there about, how to begin to access services or to learn that there are the various caregiver support services out there is really critical as this population continues to age and as caregivers feel more stress and more responsibility of possibly raising their own family and caring for aging parents. I think we provide many of the same services in the town of Colonie. We have caseworkers that can meet individually with families or, with the senior themselves and talk about what options are out there and how we can make those linkages to community-based services, because it's really the key. I feel like I'm always beating this drum, but folks want to stay in their homes. They want to stay in this community that they were such a part of developing and growing, that I feel a responsibility to provide the information and the assistance so that folks can remain independent. It's so much more comfortable to be in your own home than to be in any level of a care facility.
Right.
So,
and people really shouldn't hesitate to reach out to get that kind of assistance and knowing what's out there and getting connected, because as we both know, it's not easy to understand. It's not readily apparent sometimes what is out there. Sometimes there's kind of hidden gems and some obstacles to overcome, but there are the supports, and sometimes people just need a little help getting pointed in the right direction.
yeah, and I think that is the beauty of the support groups. Like I had said, we had provided in-person support groups twice a month, but it was difficult for people to get out to the groups. So, it seemed to us a natural transition to move folks or encourage people to participate in the telephone support group, because it does provide that flexibility that folks need when they're caring for somebody. I really appreciate you sharing this information with us today. I think it's been, good information to get out there, and we keep plugging away and trying to make it available and accessible to folks. But I do encourage folks, if they have any questions at all, you can always call the town department at 459-5051. And your services are not just for folks in the city of Albany. Based on your funding, you can provide this assistance throughout the county. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And and the contact information again would be?
465-1398.
Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted to add in closing before we wrapped up this show today?
I don't think so. Chris, I think we covered a lot of the information, but this is really a great opportunity to get to reach out to folks. I think that's the greatest barrier with caregiver programs, is people don't always realize they are a caregiver, and we use that language professionally, but people don't use that in their everyday life. So if they listen to this program, they might have realized, oh, you know what, I think I fit into what they're talking about. I think maybe this is something for me. So to get the word out there and open people's eyes is always a challenge.
Yeah, and I like to refer to caregivers often as just loving family members. Their spouses, their brothers, their sisters, their adult children. Oftentimes they're neighbors and friends and folks in their church or, their senior center. So it's a very broad term, and I think professionally we do use it a little too loosely at times. So, well, thank you very much for joining me today, Tianna. I think it's been good information, and I encourage anybody who's watching the show and needs more information to contact the Senior Resources Department at 459-5051, and we can certainly help to make that linkage with Tianna's program as well. So, on behalf of the Senior Resources Department, I'm Cary, and thank you for joining me today.